My boyfriend has been disgusted with me lately. He doesn't want to be intimate with me, doesn't want to take me out, and doesn't want to acknowledge our relationship. He says I've become unattractive, but I'm a flower spirit. Love is my nourishment. The more I'm loved, the more beautiful I become. The reason I've grown ugly is that his love for me has been fading. After months of fooling around outside, when he finally remembered me, the disgust and mockery he had prepared somehow wouldn't come out. Because, to his shock, during the days he was away, my beauty had returned. In fact, I was even more beautiful than before. Chapter 1. I turned over in bed, and the silk sheets snagged with a harsh ripping sound. Staring blankly at my dry, shriveled elbow, my heart sank. Claude had been away on a business trip for 3 days. I was withering, literally withering, something no skincare product could fix. But the remedy was simple. Claude just needed to hug me and kiss me. I'm a flower spirit, sustained by love. The stronger the love, the more beautiful I become. A hug, a kiss, anything connected to love serves as nourishment for me. Even a caring daily greeting works. But Claude was probably too busy. It had been a very long time since he'd shown concern for me on his own. I scrolled through our chat history. Almost all of it was me sharing things with him while his replies were few and far between. I tried to hold back, but in the end, I sent him another message. When are you coming back? I miss you so much. I didn't expect a quick reply. Just as I was about to lock my screen, my phone suddenly vibrated. Tonight. My eyes widened in disbelief. I read that single word over and over again. Ah. Tonight. Excitement surged through me. I immediately jumped out of bed and started preparing. Claude's favorite raspberry pie. Claude's favorite braised beef. Claude's favorite marinated seafood. I stayed busy from morning until evening. The moment the front door clicked open, I ran toward it. Claude staggered slightly when I threw myself into his arms. TCH. You're covered in the smell of cooking oil. Startled, I immediately let go and sniffed myself carefully. It didn't seem like I smelled that way, though the floral fragrance on me had indeed become so faint it was almost gone. His gaze landed on my face, and his brows furrowed. I didn't miss the obvious disgust in his eyes. A wave of hurt washed over me, mixed with unease. I knew I didn't look my best right now, but surely it wasn't bad enough to make him look at me like that. I could only comfort myself. Now that he was back, everything would be fine. I would recover. But I curled my fingers. The hangnails around my nails were still there. The long hair draped over my chest remained dry and split at the ends. Why? He had hugged me. Why hadn't anything changed at all? Claude glanced at the dining table, packed with dishes, and let out a heavy sigh. Loosening his tie, he pushed his suitcase toward me. Wash my dirty clothes. I'm heading out again. Huh? Aren't you staying for dinner? He lowered his head and lit up his phone screen, quickly replying to a message. I caught a glimpse of the conversation. Messages were flying back and forth, one after another. Instinctively, I tried to see who he was texting. Claude suddenly locked his screen. When I looked up, I met his displeased gaze. I don't like it when you do that. I apologized immediately. I'm sorry. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just curious. What kind of conversation could make him reply instantly every single time? Was I too boring? Was I too clingy? How should I change? Enough. He cut me off impatiently, turning toward the door and gripping the handle. Don't wait up for me tonight. Honestly, you're making me lose my appetite. Chapter 2. The door slammed shut right in front of me. The warmth left behind by that brief embrace faded almost immediately. I sat back down at the dining table in a daze, completely bewildered. Lose his appetite? Was he talking about me? Or the food? I sat there for a long time, unable to figure it out. By midnight, Claude still hadn't come home. I wanted to ask where he was, but I was afraid of bothering him. After hesitating for a long time, I opened my phone. Right then, a message from one of my koi spirit sisters popped up. Flora, have you heard? That little succubus was fooled by her partner with heather flowers mixed into lotus root starch for almost half a year. She's practically withering away. I was shocked. How is that possible? Did her partner stop being interested in her? TCH. It's not that he lost interest. He's just been getting fed elsewhere. I was even more stunned. The succubus had an absolutely breathtaking face and figure. Her partner had pursued her for ages before finally winning her over. Someone like that would cheat? Men, no matter how beautiful the flower or how irresistible the temptress, they'll eventually get bored. They're creatures who are addicted to novelty. Flora, you'd better be careful. If you get sent back, it'll be a huge problem. Holding my phone, I felt utterly lost. A long time ago, humans began crossing into other worlds in large numbers. Eventually, those worlds were explored so thoroughly that humans were everywhere. As part of an exchange, natives of those worlds were assigned to live here. If we failed to adapt to human society, we'd be sent back. And once sent back, we'd become nothing more than NPCs for humans to grind levels, fight monsters, and farm experience from. I didn't want to be sent back. The call finally connected on the fifth attempt, but the voice that came through the speaker wasn't Claude's. Amid the noisy background, I heard a girl complain playfully to someone nearby. "Oh, come on, keep it down. I can't hear anything." I tightened my grip on the phone. "Hello, this is Claude's phone, right? Is something wrong with him?" There was a brief silence on the other end. Then she answered in a bright, cheerful tone. "He's in the restroom. I'm answering for him." "Are you entertaining clients?" I asked carefully. "Do you know when it'll end? I can come pick him up." "Entertaining clients?" The girl laughed softly. "Is that what he told you?" He hadn't told me anything. That was just an excuse I had made up for him. I had to admit it. Claude hadn't taken me out with him in a very long time. Back when we first got together, he practically wanted to keep me attached to his side every second. He introduced me to everyone he met. Whenever someone casually asked if he'd eaten yet, he'd somehow steer the conversation into, "Yeah, how did you know Flora is my girlfriend?" That was the Claude who had loved me so openly, so proudly, as if he wanted the entire world to know. And now? Now he disliked me so much that he didn't even want me near his social circle. It wasn't until the middle of the night that he finally came home, reeking of alcohol. I struggled to get him settled into bed. Just as I was about to make him some hangover soup, his phone screen lit up. "You're so naughty." For some reason, the tone of those words immediately reminded me of the girl who had answered his phone. My heart pounded wildly. Glancing nervously at the sleeping Claude, I held my breath and used his hand to unlock the screen. The chat window was spotless, including the newest message. There were only 3 lines. "Guess what color I'm wearing underneath tomorrow. If you guess right, I'll give it to you tonight. If you guess wrong, you have to buy me the color you mentioned." Claude's reply consisted of a single word. Nothing. The blood in my body seemed to freeze. So when he had nothing to say to me, this was what he was talking about with someone else. When we were assigned to the human world, all of this world's knowledge and civilization had been implanted into us. I could talk to Claude about history, about sports, about the evolution of human society, about art and culture, about esports. Yet despite knowing all those things, I no longer had anything in common with him. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Lately, I couldn't feel Claude's love at all. So this was the kind of thing he liked? The words of my coy spirit sister echoed in my mind. Men are forever chasing novelty. Had I become too boring? Too obedient? Too well-behaved? If that was the problem, I could change. I would learn. Chapter 3. When I woke up the next morning, Claude's side of the bed had long since gone cold. I got out of bed slowly and made myself a late breakfast. I had just sat down when the doorbell rang. Standing outside was an unfamiliar young man who looked extremely nervous. Immediately setting aside the sadness I'd been trying to process since last night, I cautiously hid behind the door. "Who are you looking for?" "Hello. I'm your neighbor. I moved in 2 months ago. I don't mean any harm. The young man raised his hands and took 2 steps back. I really couldn't resist anymore. Couldn't resist? I became even more wary and slowly closed the door, leaving only a narrow crack. "The food from your apartment smells way too good." He looked at me hopefully. "Could you let me have a meal? I'll pay for it." Smells good? But I had only made a pot of rice cooker mixed rice. I'd simply dumped all the leftover ingredients from last night into the rice cooker and let it cook together. Since Claude wasn't home, I could survive the whole day on something simple. Seeing that I still looked suspicious, he frantically began pulling out documents. His ID card, student ID, medical insurance card, rental agreement. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was that I suddenly felt something. A strong feeling. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was like the gentle spring rain of early April, softly seeping into every pore of my body. Looking down, I saw that my pale nail beds had regained their healthy color. My dull, dry skin now glowed with a luminous softness. I looked up in shock. "You like me?" The young man clearly hadn't expected me to be so direct. His eyes widened instantly, and he began stammering in panic. "No, I mean, yes. I know you have a boyfriend. I don't have any inappropriate intentions. I was genuinely just craving the food, not craving you. Okay, maybe a little, but I won't cross any boundaries. I promise. I wasn't wearing this athletic tank top to seduce you. I just came back from basketball practice. I smelled the food before I had time to change, and I definitely didn't come over on purpose because your boyfriend isn't home." What was he even talking about? I was completely confused. In the end, he looked utterly helpless, not daring to get too close. He stood several steps away and pleaded softly. "Please don't dislike me." He looked like a giant homeless puppy. After thinking about it, I decided that people who reminded me of puppies probably weren't bad. "All right, wait here." I closed the door and headed into the kitchen. A moment later, I came back with a lunch container. Since he'd helped me recover a little, I'd treat him to a meal. Before I got together with Claude, I used to feel this kind of affection all the time. Flower spirits were born with the ability to make people like them, but liking someone was just liking them. Continuing to love them, that was the remarkable part. Claude, could it be that he really doesn't love? I immediately shook my head and forced the thought out of my mind. I packed the lunchbox until it was completely full. Then I reopened the door a crack and handed it out. Can I get your contact information?" he asked. "I'll transfer the money to you." "No need." "Then, when would be a good time for me to return the lunchbox?" "Just leave it outside the door." "Okay." He looked a little disappointed, but soon he smiled again, holding the lunchbox as if it were something sacred. He declared solemnly, "I'll eat every single grain. College guys really can eat." I was afraid the container wouldn't be big enough, so I'd packed the rice down as tightly as possible. It was practically compressed into a brick. Still, I should thank him. I ran my fingers through my silky hair, a thought occurring to me. Since I'd recovered a little, maybe I should bring Claude lunch today. Chapter 4. Before going to Claude's company, I stopped by the succubus's apartment. She looked much better now. I was so stupid before, putting all my hopes on one man. "Do you know that cute guy from the coffee shop downstairs? Last night he ate 8 pineapples for me." 8! Sob. I never knew things could be this sweet. Oh, was this really something I was supposed to hear? My face grew warm. Then I caught sight of myself in the mirror. This black leather strapless dress seemed to have ventilation holes everywhere. I instantly felt like I was on fire. She zipped up the back for me and rested her chin on my shoulder. "Flora, do you really want to win him back? Why not do what I did and find someone new? There are 3.5 billion men in this world, but Claude was the first person who had ever shown me kindness. Back then, several men had surrounded me, pestering me relentlessly and insisting that I go back to their homes with them. He was the one who stepped in and got me out of that situation. I had once been loved by him so intensely, so passionately. I didn't want to give up. If what he wanted was novelty, then I'd give him novelty. Very soon, I would realize just how foolish that idea was. Most of the employees at Claude's company had gone out for lunch. I walked to the door of his office. Just as I was about to push it open, I heard a familiar female voice. There was laughter in it, mixed with playful flirtation. My hand froze halfway to the door, through the gap that hadn't been fully closed. Our eyes met. She had a youthful, clean-looking face. Her features weren't particularly striking, though she could be called reasonably pretty. She was sitting on Claude's desk. The moment she saw me, both her smile and the legs she had been swinging paused briefly. Then the smile returned. "Claude." She spoke to him, but her eyes remained fixed on me. Your girlfriend is so beautiful. How could I possibly compare? Claude had his back to me. At her words, he let out a mocking laugh. Beautiful? Without a man? She's nothing. Don't try to fool me just because I haven't been here long. I've heard how desperately you chased after her back then. So what? Claude impatiently pulled the woman into his arms. His tone dripped with ridicule. I was just obsessed for a while. Later, every time I thought about how stunning she looked when I first met her, and realized that beauty had been nurtured by other men's affection before me, I felt sick. I actually want to see what happens when she loses my love. Will she really wither away? Chapter 5. A knock at the door pulled me back to reality. Only then did I realize I was still sitting blankly in the entryway. I didn't know how I had left Claude's office, or how I had made it home. All I knew was that it was almost dark outside now. When I stood up, every joint in my body crackled loudly. My gaze swept across the full-length mirror and suddenly froze. A withered flower abandoned after blooming, that was probably what I looked like. Worn out, shriveled, as though every movement would cause pieces of me to crumble away. Standing outside the door was the young man from this morning. He was holding my lunch container and carrying a bag from a dessert shop. I recognized it. The newly opened one 2 streets away. What happened to you? Are you sick? I'll take you to the hospital. My brain was too numb to think. By the time I realized what I was doing, I had already grabbed the hem of his shirt. Could you hug me? No problem. No problem. I'll carry you to the car. Just hang in there. Not the car. I tightened my grip. Come inside. Hug me. The tall young man seemed to crash completely. Only then did he notice my overly short leather dress. After staring blankly for 2 seconds, he awkwardly looked away. Isn't that kind of inappropriate? The feeling surrounding him was like a gentle spring breeze and soft rain. To me, in my current state, it was irresistibly attractive. Whether it was appropriate or not no longer mattered. I felt like roots on the verge of drying out, finally sensing a trace of water, desperately reaching toward it. Closer, just a little closer. I touched it. The young man's entire body instantly tensed. You broke up? Even his voice sounded tight. Broken up? My mind was foggy. The thought process felt painfully slow. At noon, I had fled in panic. I hadn't gotten an explanation, nor had I broken up with Claude. So technically, not yet. I shook my head. The hands that had been hovering lightly behind my back seemed to encounter some invisible resistance. They paused in midair. After an unknown amount of time, it was as though he finally overcame that resistance. His arms tightened suddenly, pulling me into a complete embrace. His breath brushed against my ear. It tickled. What else do you need me to do? Actually, this was already wonderful. Standing was just a little tiring. After a lot of awkward adjustments, we ended up with him sitting on the sofa while I sat facing him in his lap. The affection radiating from him felt like rain falling from heaven. I could feel every inch of my body gradually relaxing and reviving. A contented sigh escaped my lips. I was saved. If only he weren't so nervous. His thighs and chest muscles were rock hard. I felt as though I were sitting on a wooden bench. It was uncomfortable. I protested softly. Could you not be so stiff? The wooden bench that had been completely motionless immediately scooted backward a little. Sorry, that's not something I can control. I looked at him in confusion, lifting my head from his shoulder. You can't relax a little? His gaze darted away. His thick eyelashes trembled slightly. Not right away. I still didn't understand why he couldn't. But it was better than being shipped back to my original world and getting beaten up by monsters far tougher than this situation. After quietly absorbing his affection for a long time, my body recovered by about 70 or 80%. Unfortunately, my mental state quietly collapsed in the process. Heavens, what had I done? I'd dragged a neighbor I'd only just met into my house. I hadn't even asked his name before practically clinging to him, and then I'd complained that his embrace wasn't soft enough. He was just an innocent puppy-like guy with a huge appetite, a love of food, and a little crush on me. Say something, anything, fix this situation. As I desperately searched for words, his voice sounded above my head. Feeling better? He paused. How about some cake? Sweet food usually makes people feel better. As he spoke, One hand supported my lower back while he leaned forward to reach for the dessert bag on the coffee table. The movement brought us even closer together, practically inseparable. I could clearly feel the rise and fall of his chest and abdomen with every breath. Firm, strong. The situation had somehow become even stranger. This was bad, very bad. I raised a hand and pressed it against his shoulder. "Thank you," I stammered. "I'm okay now." He froze briefly. A flash of disappointment passed through his eyes before vanishing. Then he quickly let go of me. The atmosphere became awkward. The two of us felt like strangers who had accidentally spent the night together and only just woken up. We stared at each other, neither knowing what to say. After a long silence, he was the first to break it. He unlocked his phone. "Should I scan your code, or will you scan mine?" Seeing my confused expression, he laughed. His eyes sparkled brightly. "If you're still feeling unwell, you can contact me anytime. I'll be pretty free for a while." Such a sincere and helpful smile, completely harmless. I found myself staring for a moment before obediently taking out my phone and adding him. We exchanged names for our contact notes. Jordan. I unconsciously repeated his name. A warm feeling settled in my heart. It wasn't until long after he left that I realized I had never properly thanked him. After thinking about it for a while, I finally sent him a message. "Thank you so much for today. If you don't mind, you're welcome to come over for meals anytime." Jordan hadn't replied yet. Instead, a message from Claude popped up. "Business dinner tonight. Make some hangover soup in advance." Chapter 6. That single sentence was enough to send my briefly recovered body and mind spiraling toward collapse again. I tried not to think about the flirtation and betrayal I had witnessed at noon. I tried to force Claude's contemptuous, faintly malicious words out of my head. I wanted to calm down, to reject him, to confront him, to cut ties with him completely, but my hands trembled as I typed. My breathing became more rapid with every breath. My head began to feel dizzy again, as though deprived of oxygen. In the end, I gritted my teeth, threw my phone aside, and pushed myself up from the sofa. I decided to change out of this humiliating dress first. Just then, my fingertips brushed against something hard. I pulled it out and discovered it was a student ID card. Had it fallen earlier? But I looked at the gap in the sofa cushions. How could something accidentally fall so perfectly into a crack like that? Opening the student ID, I found a photo of the young man smiling with carefree confidence. If the name and face hadn't matched, I would have wondered whether I was looking at the wrong card. So the shy, well-behaved young man could smile so boldly after all. After admiring it for a moment, I was about to message him that he'd forgotten his student ID. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a Bluetooth earbud beneath the coffee table. It wasn't mine, and it certainly wasn't Claude's. It could only belong to Jordan. As I picked it up and placed it beside the student ID, I noticed a silver woven bracelet lying on the carpet. The owner of the dropped equipment showed up very quickly. Jordan scratched his cheek awkwardly. "I think I left." I presented everything with both hands. "Anything else?" He froze slightly. The frustration on his face suddenly looked much more genuine. "Thank you, and sorry. Actually, you didn't have to do all this. I would have contacted you anyway." Now it was my turn to feel embarrassed. "For a while, I'm going to need you. Need your affection. Need your love." Even without looking up, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. It made me nervous. My next words came out awkwardly. "But I might not be able to give you the response you want, and I won't really date you." I swallowed. "Can you still accept that?" Jordan said nothing. Of course he wouldn't agree. Only a fool would pour out feelings without expecting anything in return. Just as I was about to say something else to ease the awkwardness, he suddenly stepped closer. Before I could react, a powerful surge of affection exploded around me. My knees nearly gave out. I looked up in shock. Jordan was smiling, the curve of his lips unmistakably confident, with pleasure. At that moment, I realized I might have been wrong. Perhaps he wasn't some gentle, food-loving puppy after all. Maybe the sharp confidence in that student ID photo was his true nature. For example, right now, he had evolved from someone asking for free meals to someone insisting on cooking dinner for me. After opening the refrigerator and taking a quick look inside, he turned around and asked, "Tomato beef soup or creamy mushroom soup?" He had completely eliminated the option of refusing. Somehow, despite trying to decline moments ago, I found myself being led along by him. Would braised beef ribs and scrambled eggs with tomatoes be okay? Of course. Chapter 7. Jordan's affection was pure. Being close to him brought a level of physical and emotional comfort I'd never experienced before. But I'd already been hurt once. I wasn't foolish enough to tell someone everything anymore. Instead, I claimed that I suffered from touch starvation and needed hugs from people to feel better. After dinner, he volunteered to wash the dishes. I wandered around behind him and eventually couldn't resist leaning against his back. It felt so comfortable that I could practically bloom. Jordan didn't say anything. He simply slowed his movements considerably. My mind gradually drifted. Claude and I used to be like this too, always stuck together. He loved watching me grow more beautiful under the nourishment of his affection, like an artist admiring a masterpiece. And then, he decided to destroy it with his own hands. At that thought, I unconsciously straightened up. Jordan turned his head. "Why'd you stop leaning on me? Feeling uncomfortable?" He glanced toward the sink. "Give me a second to wash the soap off my hands." Before I could answer, the doorbell suddenly rang. I froze. Only then did I remember that I had never replied to Claude's message. Had he come home this early? "Your boyfriend?" Jordan was still wearing my apron. Soap bubbles clung to his hands. His tone remained calm and unhurried as he raised an eyebrow and smiled at me. There wasn't the slightest trace of panic at the possibility of being caught by someone's official boyfriend. Seeing his expression somehow calmed me too. Not for much longer. The person standing outside wasn't Claude. It was the young woman from the office. The moment her eyes landed on my face, a flash of shock and distortion crossed her expression. She quickly recovered and smiled sweetly. "Hey, girl, I'm here to pick up the hangover soup. Oh, and by the way, Claude won't be coming home tonight, so you don't need to wait for him." After speaking, she pursed her lips. The delight in her eyes was impossible to hide as she stared at me without blinking. I had completely forgotten. So much time had passed since Claude's message, and I hadn't thought about it once. Only now did I realize something. Whenever Jordan was around, everything related to Claude seemed to get automatically muted. I pondered for a moment. Then I gave her an equally bright smile. "No." "What?" I said I didn't make any, and I won't be waiting for him. I tilted my head slightly. "Please tell him that once he's sober, he should come talk to me properly." The reaction she had expected never appeared. Instead, she looked visibly rattled. "Didn't you hear me? Claude is spending tonight, Mississippi." Jordan poked his head around the doorframe and interrupted her. "That's the sort of thing you keep to yourself and quietly enjoy. It's not really something you should be announcing so loudly." He smiled pleasantly. "I understand wanting to show off. I do too, since I'd like to move up and rank myself." The woman froze. Her mouth hung open for several seconds before she finally managed to speak. "What are you?" Jordan shut the door without hesitation. The moment it closed, he immediately looked guilty, like someone who had done something wrong. Sneaking glances at me, he asked cautiously, "Shouldn't I have interrupted?" "Sorry, I couldn't help myself." I almost laughed. There had been several times when I'd wanted to ask him what exactly he liked about me, but every time, I remembered that I was only taking advantage of that affection. I would never return it, and so I forcibly buried my curiosity. I was afraid that after hearing his sincere confession, all I could offer in return would be disappointing silence. That night, Claude never contacted me. I didn't know what the woman had told him, but for the next few days, he never came home. Perhaps that was for the best. I still hadn't fully recovered. Seeing him now might undo all my progress. Growing a flower takes an enormous amount of effort and care. You have to create the right environment. Pay attention constantly. Prune branches when necessary. Protect it from harmful things. But making a flower wither? That doesn't require waiting until the blooming season ends. One missed watering, one forgotten pest. Either can cause fatal damage. Once decline begins, no amount of compensation can fully reverse it. Flowers are like that. And so are the people we love. Chapter 8. Jordan came over whenever he had free time. I worried that I might be distracting him from graduating, but he couldn't have cared less. Resting his chin on my shoulder, he watched as I packed away a necktie and clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction. Can't bear to part with it? Yesterday, after messaging Claude to ask when he'd come back, I received a vague reply, soon, so I started clearing things out. Everything that belonged to Claude was being sorted, packed, and prepared for him to take away when he finally showed up. This tie had been a gift from me. On the back, I'd embroidered a tiny flower with silver gray thread. The thread had been so fine that it nearly ruined my eyesight, yet he'd never worn it even once. I did feel reluctant, not because of the tie, because of the effort I'd poured into it. Seeing that I didn't deny it, Jordan became even more unhappy. He wanted to protest but lacked both the right and the position to do so. So he sat off to the side and sulked. After a long silence, he finally spoke in a resentful tone. Flora, I think your touch starvation syndrome might be contagious. If you ignore me and don't hug me, I feel awful all over. Take a shower. You'll feel better. So that's it? Use me and throw me away? That sounded a little heartless. The truth was, my nourishment reserves were already more than sufficient. Back when I was with Claude, the only person who enthusiastically greeted me when I took out the trash was the lady who collected cardboard boxes for recycling. But over the past few days, people had started offering to help before I even made it out of my apartment building. That familiar feeling of being surrounded by affection had returned. Honestly, I didn't really need Jordan anymore, but I couldn't bring myself to reject him. After all, he'd saved me when I was at my lowest. Fine, just one hug. I have to go out this afternoon. Before I could even finish speaking, Jordan pulled me into his arms. The hand around my waist hesitated for only a moment before slipping beneath the hem of my shirt with familiar ease. I shrank back instinctively. Don't do that. You'll end up. After sitting on his lap enough times, I'd learned that it wasn't only his muscles that became rock hard. Too late. Jordan sighed dramatically. That already happened. Jordan was smart. After only a few encounters, he'd figured out the reason behind my recovery. One time after hugging me, he pinned me lightly against the sofa and murmured in a tender voice, "Have you ever considered trying a more efficient method?" The temptation in that whisper was about as dangerous as a gardener waving a bottle of premium fertilizer in front of a flower and asking if it wanted a taste. I resisted, again and again, but Jordan was persistent, again and again. Every compromise I made only encouraged him to push a little further, though we'd always stopped before crossing any rail lines. We'd already drifted very far from the original agreement of just hugs. Flora, he buried his face against my neck and nuzzled lazily. You smell amazing. His words reminded me that I really did need to leave. In this world, my profession was perfumer. After getting together with Claude, I'd neglected my career for far too long. It was time to pick it back up. I'll come with you, Jordan offered. The mall opened a new dessert shop. I fastened the last button of my blouse and turned toward him. No need. I'll bring something back for you. Jordan straightened lazily. I want whatever your favorite is. My favorite, raspberry pie? No, that was Claude's favorite. The reason there was always beef in my refrigerator was because Claude liked it too. I froze. I suddenly realized I couldn't remember what I actually liked. The shoulder-length curls? Because Claude liked them. The elegant designer-inspired outfits? Because Claude liked them. Waiting at home for him to return? Because Claude liked that too. He had carefully pruned me into the version he preferred, arranged me beautifully in a vase, then waited for me to wither. Jordan and I ended up sampling almost every dessert in the shop. Then I tasted the pistachio yogurt cheesecake. Suddenly, something brightened inside me. You like that one? I nodded repeatedly and pushed the small plate toward him. Try it. Jordan didn't reach for the fork. Instead, he leaned forward slightly and tasted from my spoon. His eyes curved with satisfaction. I like it too. The dessert shop buzzed with conversation. People came and went all around us, for no reason at all. My heart skipped a beat. Flustered, I pushed him back into his seat. We're in public. Behave yourself. Jordan's response seemed completely unrelated. Flora, you're really beautiful. Young people and their impossible train of thought. I muttered a vague thanks. Well, I guess I should thank you. It doesn't have much to do with me. His gaze settled on me, warm and unwavering. You were always beautiful. Even with my head lowered over the dessert, I could feel his intense stare, feel the affection radiating from him. The love around me had become so dense that it felt almost tangible. I couldn't handle it. With trembling hands, I packed up the unfinished cake. Jordan took the box from me, then casually intertwined his fingers with mine. I tried to pull away. Failed. Since I helped you discover your favorite flavor. His thumb brushed lightly against my hand. Can I get a reward? Chapter 9. The moment he said that, I calmed down. Holding hands was fine. However, the second we stepped into the elevator in the underground parking garage, he pinned me against the corner and kissed me. Only then did I realize the reward he wanted wasn't hand-holding. Wait. Can't wait. Cradling my face in his hands, Jordan abandoned every trace of restraint and self-control. Too many desserts can cause breakouts. I'm helping you take preventive measures. Huh? What a shamelessly clever excuse. Fine. I had to admit I was convinced by it. But not here. This was an elevator where someone could walk in at any moment. I was only halfway through worrying when the elevator doors opened. A familiar, slightly hesitant voice sounded from outside. Boss Jordan? It was Claude. Almost instinctively, I buried myself deeper into Jordan's chest. I didn't even know why I felt guilty. Physically and emotionally, I was already done with Claude, but without actually saying the words we're breaking up. What I was doing now hardly felt honorable. Also, Boss Jordan? What kind of title was that? I tried to glance up at Jordan. He simply raised a hand and pressed my head back against him. I haven't seen you around the company lately. Is graduation going smoothly? Claude's hand paused over the elevator buttons. Boss Jordan lives on the 8th floor too? That's right. Jordan's heartbeat remained steady and powerful. Not a hint of panic. He even had enough attention to spare to absent-mindedly stroke my earlobe with his thumb. I sucked in a sharp breath. A victorious chuckle escaped him. Claude's gaze swept toward us and paused briefly. Director Claude seems very interested in my girlfriend. No. Claude immediately turned away. It's just that the perfume smells familiar. Of course it does. My eyes widened. Surely he wasn't about to. Claude looked equally surprised. Jordan continued calmly. I smelled it before and couldn't stop thinking about it. I finally managed to get the same one. Oh, I see. Claude nodded repeatedly, yet his eyes kept drifting toward us through the reflection in the elevator wall. By the way, Director Claude, how are things with your girlfriend? Jordan's tone remained casual. I've heard some unpleasant rumors. Have you already broken up? We haven't broken up. Claude answered without hesitation. It's probably just gossip. Our relationship is great. He smiled. When we get married, you absolutely have to come have a drink. Jordan and I froze simultaneously. At that exact moment, the elevator reached the 8th floor. Claude gave a slight nod and stepped out first. Jordan remained motionless, blocking me. I pushed at him. Instead, he caught my wrist. What do we do? His voice was low. He doesn't seem interested in breaking up. My thoughts were a mess. I'd believed we could sit down and end things calmly and maturely. Yet a single sentence from Claude had thrown me into confusion again. Jordan bit lightly at my lower lip, forcing me back to the present. At this point, whether he wants to break up or not isn't his decision anymore. Move. I pulled against him. I want to go home. Not right now. Why not? I don't want to drag this out anymore. Jordan's hold didn't budge. Frustration rose inside me, mixed with helplessness. That's not what I meant. Taking my hand, he pressed it against his chest, then slowly guided it downward. Since you already gave me a reward. His eyes curved with amusement. Could you finish giving it properly? Chapter 10. There was, of course, no reward. I sat on the sofa with my arms crossed, interrogating Jordan about exactly when he'd started liking me. Looking aggrieved, he nuzzled against me and tried to change the subject. This is torture. Do we really have to talk about this right now? Acting like a puppy won't work. Fine. Jordan stopped pretending. The next second, he climbed onto the sofa and pushed me back against the cushions. I'd almost forgotten. He was far more dangerous when he wasn't acting like a harmless puppy. Flora. His eyes curved slightly. Your boyfriend was the one who personally invited me into your home. Back when Claude and I had first started dating, he loved inviting coworkers and friends over for meals. At the time, I'd been secretly delighted. I thought he simply couldn't resist showing off our relationship. Only now did I realize the truth. What Claude wanted to show off wasn't our love. It was a different kind of superiority. The woman everyone else considered goddess-like was cooking and cleaning for him, busy in the kitchen and around the house, gentle, obedient, almost like a maid. Jordan was the son of the group that employed Claude. I couldn't even remember when he'd first visited. Back then, Claude had occupied my entire heart and mind. Everyone else had been nothing more than labels. This person didn't eat spicy food. That person was allergic to seafood. Someone else preferred their alcohol warmed. As for Jordan, after he moved in, we'd crossed paths in the elevator countless times. He'd held the door open for me, helped carry my packages, shared his umbrella on rainy days, and I remembered none of it. When you truly love someone, you don't notice anyone else. The phone on the coffee table kept ringing. When the calls stopped, message notifications immediately followed. Most likely, Claude had discovered that all his belongings had been packed up and left outside the apartment. He was panicking. Unfortunately for him, neither of us had much attention to spare. Having seized control of the conversation, Jordan turned the questioning back on me. "Can you see me now?" My response came out fragmented and uneven. "Why, yes. I can see you." Apparently, he didn't believe me. Taking my hand, he led me into the bathroom. I found myself kneeling against the vanity, forced to face my reflection in the mirror. The exhausted, dull version of myself was long gone. The woman staring back looked like a camellia touched by fresh snow, radiant, more beautiful than I'd ever been. But I had no attention to spare for my appearance. Bracing myself against the mirror, my voice trembled. "Jordan, I'm going to fall." "No." His arms tightened around my waist, holding me as though I were something precious. Like a bouquet he refused to let go of. "I won't let you fall." Chapter 11. It was already late at night when I got home. Claude had drained my phone battery with non-stop calls. When I opened the door, the living room was completely dark. I had assumed he'd left long ago, but the moment I stepped inside, I kicked the boxes that had originally been left by the entrance. At the same time, Claude's voice rang out from the living room, irritation dripping from every word. "So you finally decided to come home? Where were you? Why weren't you answering my calls?" I was surprised. Had he really been sitting here waiting all this time? "It's only been a few days since I came home. Did you seriously have to throw this kind of tantrum?" He stood up from the sofa. "What? You want to break up?" Using the faint light spilling in through the windows, I saw him reach for the light switch. "Don't turn on the light." My voice was horribly hoarse, like rusted metal scraping together. Just forcing the words out took effort. Claude paused. Then he suddenly laughed. The tension in his expression disappeared, replaced by the familiar disdain and contempt. "Oh, I get it. You don't want me seeing what you look like now. It must be hard to accept. After all, you used to be so beautiful. Now you're nowhere near good enough for me. But don't worry." His tone grew smug. "I'll still keep you around." At this point, I'm probably the only one who would. The light switched on. Instinctively, I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, I was met with Claude's stunned, disbelieving stare. He had guessed correctly. I really hadn't wanted him to see me like this. 2 buttons were missing from my blouse. The exposed skin at my collarbone and chest was covered in marks Jordan had left behind. Bright red traces stood out vividly against pale skin. A storm of emotions flashed through Claude's eyes. Shock, confusion, disbelief, and finally, overwhelming rage. He strode toward me, grabbing my shoulders. He slammed me against the door. His eyes were bloodshot. Veins bulged at his temples. "You actually..." He ground out the words through clenched teeth, then stopped. Perhaps he was too furious to decide what word to use. Cheating? Betrayal? An affair? I was too exhausted from everything Jordan had put me through earlier to struggle. Instead, I laughed. Self-preservation. I tilted my head slightly. Am I not allowed to save myself? Or was I supposed to wait until I withered away, just so your wish could come true? You. His pupils contracted sharply. You heard that? Panic flashed briefly across his face. Then, almost immediately, he reverted to aggression. So what if you did? It's not like I would have actually let you die. I just couldn't get over it. Did I ever say I didn't want you anymore? I never even complained about how many men you'd had before me. And now you're demanding that I love you forever? Before Claude, I'd never been in a relationship. Maybe he'd forgotten. Before any gardener appeared, the flower had already been blooming perfectly well. He'd fabricated filthy assumptions about me, assigned me crimes I'd never committed. Back then, I hadn't had the strength to defend myself. Now, I simply didn't care to. From the other side of the door came a familiar feeling. Warm, steady. Jordan must have woken up. He was standing outside. I was calmer than I'd ever imagined possible. Slowly, I looked Claude up and down. Then I smiled with the same contempt he'd once shown me. His expression immediately cracked. Anger flickered across his face. "What are you laughing at?" A gentle knock sounded on the door. I wrapped my hand around the doorknob but made no move to open it yet. "Your image was something I created." I met his gaze directly. "You were the successful man who conquered a beautiful woman. The thing you showed off to other people wasn't your career, wasn't your talent. It was me. You wore a flower as decoration. You enjoyed the admiration and envy it brought you. And eventually, you became so intoxicated by the attention that you convinced yourself you were the main character." I smiled. "But sorry, without me, you're nothing." Claude stood frozen in shock. I opened the door. Jordan was leaning casually against the wall. He poked his head inside. "I think I heard people arguing." His gaze landed on Claude. "Director Claude, you're not breaking up, are you?" He smiled innocently. "Your complexion looks terrible." Claude no longer bothered with politeness or appearances. His eyes locked onto me. "Flora." His voice shook with anger. "Who the hell is that guy? When you looked like that before, there was no way anyone could possibly like you." Chapter 12. He soon found out exactly who that other man was. Jordan was truly a menace. While I wasn't paying attention, he somehow stole that necktie and wore it to work, showing it off everywhere. That very evening, he squeezed his way into my apartment with an aggrieved expression. "Flora." He hit me. I jumped in alarm, cupping his face. I searched anxiously for injuries. After a long inspection, I finally found a tiny scratch that was practically healed already. Internal injuries. Jordan immediately looked even more pitiful. "I need kisses and hugs to recover." "What about him?" Jordan instantly threw up his hands. "I'm shattered. Completely shattered." I sighed helplessly and wrapped my arms around him, patting his back perfunctorily. I finally managed to soothe him. Only then did he answer casually. "He's fine, I guess." A pause. "Probably not dead." "And that girl?" Jordan suddenly became extremely busy. For some reason, fidgeting, looking around, doing absolutely nothing useful. Finally, he buried his face against me and rubbed his cheek against my shoulder. "Ouch." His voice was muffled. "Everything suddenly hurts." I had a vague feeling that something wasn't quite right, but I couldn't spare the energy to investigate. The new fragrance I'd launched became a huge success. For the first time, I experienced a different kind of overwhelming affection, one that had nothing to do with men, and nothing to do with romance. I began exploring the kind of life I genuinely enjoyed, developing hobbies, discovering my own interests, because little by little, I came to understand something important. When I learned how to love myself, the world finally learned how to love me back. Chapter Extra, Jordan's Perspective. Here we go again. He's bragging about his girlfriend. Again. I hated Claude. No real ability. No meaningful achievements. Everything he had was built on the efforts of his team. If my father hadn't insisted that I spend some time learning under him first, I would have kicked him out ages ago. His little followers were marveling over the elaborate lunchbox he'd brought. Claude waved it off casually. "Aw." I told her not to bother. She insisted on waking up at 5 in the morning to make it for me. "That's insane, Claude." "Damn. I'm jealous. I'd love a girlfriend that devoted." "You're so lucky." Claude's expression shifted slightly. One of the sycophants immediately jumped in to flatter him. "If you had half of Claude's charm, you'd have one too." Another round of tedious mutual admiration followed. Someone finally noticed that I'd been silent the entire time. They grinned and nudged me. "Jordan probably doesn't know. Claude's girlfriend is an amazing cook. We go to his place for free meals all the time." "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't that inconvenience her?" Claude looked at me, his eyes lighting up. Not at all. She loves it. He smiled. How about tonight? Anyone free can come over for dinner. There were less than 5 hours left until dinner time. Did he have any idea how exhausting it was to prepare food for that many people in such a short time? I was about to refuse. Instead, he casually waved his phone. I already told her. Everyone cheered. I swallowed the objection I'd been about to voice. Claude's girlfriend really was beautiful. Every positive adjective in the world suited her. Throughout the entire evening, she remained busy in the kitchen, while everyone else talked loudly and laughed. She struggled to carry a heavy cast iron pot by herself. I used smoking as an excuse and walked into the kitchen, turning the range hood to its highest setting. I created a wall of noise that separated us from everyone outside. She looked puzzled when she saw me holding a cigarette without lighting it. Honestly, I was puzzled too. What exactly was I doing here? I just knew I didn't want to listen to those idiots anymore. The cabinet doors were covered with sticky notes, food allergies, preferences, dislikes, every detail about the people outside. She handed me a pen and notepad, signaling for me to add my own preferences. I didn't take them. Instead, I asked, "What about you?" She blinked, then smiled. "I'm not important." It was difficult to describe the shock that answer caused. "You like him that much?" My voice was quiet, almost drowned out by the range hood. She leaned closer and asked me to repeat myself. I caught the faint fragrance surrounding her. My body stiffened involuntarily. "I do." Her smile softened. "He's my everything." Even after my assistant picked me up that night, those words continued echoing in my mind. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The face staring back was young and clean-cut. Before I realized it, I heard myself speaking. "Your family desperately needs money, right?" Every rational part of my brain was sounding alarms, begging me not to lose my mind. My mouth, however, remained calm. "Break Claude and his girlfriend up, no matter how you do it." My assistant was horrified. After confirming I wasn't joking, she cautiously replied, "Honestly, I don't think they'll last even if nobody interferes. I can't wait." She immediately began negotiating compensation. "At least make your acting convincing." I glared at her. "If you get caught, you're fired." She had already climbed out of the car and happily accepted the deal. Then she kicked the tire. Capitalist dog. I hadn't expected things to go so smoothly. The day Claude came back from his business trip only to leave again almost immediately, I knocked on Flora's door. I knew she was wary of everyone except Claude. That was fine. I could act like a puppy. A little carefully timed stupidity, a little harmless clumsiness. Bit by bit, her defenses came down. She came to believe I was a guy with a few tiny schemes who was terrible at hiding them. That was exactly what she believed. Everything unfolded according to my plan, and then things started going off course. Originally, I wanted her to love me the way she'd loved Claude, to look at nobody except me. But the day she tasted a dessert she genuinely loved, the way her eyes lit up instantly, something inside me changed. A voice whispered, "Forget it. This is good too. No, this is better." 6 months after she and Claude broke up, I finally couldn't take it anymore. She became more beautiful, more accomplished, more confident, and the number of outstanding men around her kept increasing. I panicked, so I resorted to a few tricks. I bribed the succubus with 8 elite male models and convinced her to help me stage a scene. "Flora." The succubus wrapped an arm around me dramatically. "Since he's not your boyfriend, can I take him home? I've never tried one like this before." "I want to." Flora said nothing. I was so nervous I felt sick. Inside, I was desperately begging her to stop me. "Please, just once, tell me to stay." But the succubus had nearly dragged me out the door, and Flora still hadn't spoken. I was frantically trying to figure out how to save myself when she finally looked up. My heart shot straight into my throat. "Jordan." She examined her newly done manicure and spoke casually. "If you walk out that door, don't come back." I immediately shoved the succubus outside, then slammed the door shut. "Wah." I threw my arms around Flora. "I knew you loved me, wife."